Did U.S. firms help propel China's balloon fleet? Gordon Chang calls for Americans to do more to confront growing threats like these. Real Clear Wire, Susan Cranberry on WND reports. Senator Mark Kelly, who previously served as a decorated space shuttle pilot with NASA, waded into the Chinese spy balloon uproar earlier this week after keeping publicly mum about it for several weeks. So we can guess what the answer is to this. The Arizona Democrats said it makes no sense for the U.S. military to launch expensive missiles at weather balloons or other benign floating objects. Kelly was referring to a heat-seeking air-to-air missile used in recent weeks to shoot down several high-flying aerial objects that the administration later suggested likely did not pose a threat. Earlier in the month, the U.S. Air Force F-22 shot down a Chinese surveillance balloon after it breached American airspace and floated across the country, setting off a firestorm in Washington. Kelly, who is set to be inducted into the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame in May, says he's working on legislation that would require weather balloons to carry transponders that would communicate with air traffic control systems to separate research balloons from mysterious objects. So that makes sense, doesn't it? He said it would really help the Defense Department to be able to sort out which is a civilian science payload, what is a weather balloon, what is a NASA balloon, what is a private company in the United States doing, what might be even a U.S. military. Kelly, who was tapped to chair a Senate Armed Services Subcommittee amid the balloon controversy, told Associated Press. Senator John Tester, a Montana Democrat who headed up the investigation into how a Chinese surveillance balloon was allowed to pass over crucial U.S. missile sites, including some in his own state, was more forceful. He said, "We're going to get to the bottom of what happened to make sure we have a plan going forward to detect and then find out what potential problems this balloon may have caused," he said. China's high-altitude spy balloon controversy appears to have taken most Washington lawmakers and the intelligence community by surprise. But it really should not have. China's interest in these stratospheric dirigibles, these blimps, has been an open secret for nearly a decade. Kelly himself has first-hand knowledge of China's investments in near-space balloon technology. The Arizona senator co-founded a balloon space exploration company named Worldview in 2012. Just 2 years later, he helped facilitate investments for the firm from Chinese tech giant Tencent, Real Clear Politics reported in 2020. Kelly's eldest daughter, Claudia Kelly, served as Worldview's business opportunity manager from 2016 to 2019, according to her LinkedIn profile. Tencent is one of the world's largest internet enterprises and owns the popular social media platform WeChat, a texting application with more than 1 billion users worldwide. In recent years, Tencent has faced international bans and scrutiny over its practice of monitoring the activity of its users inside and outside China, and for the Chinese government's use of the data as a key component in its massive surveillance and persecution of Uyghur population and other minorities. In 2020, President Trump issued an executive order banning it and the popular social media app TikTok in the United States, but a U.S. District Court judge issued an injunction blocking the order several months later. President Biden withdrew the order in 2021, while directing the Commerce Department to investigate foreign influence in acting through the apps. Now, to be fair to Kelly and his role in facilitating the Tencent investment in Worldview in 2014, WeChat's surveillance applications in China were either not widely known or were not yet fully instituted. While the Tucson-based company was first launched, it focused on space tourism with plans to charge $75,000 per commercial passenger on flights to near outer space in a capsule attached to a giant helium balloon. By 2025, the company shifted to contracting with NASA and the Department of Defense to use the balloon known as a Stratolite to carry unmanned payloads for extended periods and provide imagery of the Earth with a resolution sharp to 5 centimeters, far better than satellites can offer. Kelly served as a strategic advisor to Worldview until launching his Senate campaign in 2019. According to his 2019-21 financial disclosure report and amendments filed with the Senate as required, he maintained a $100,000 to $250,000 financial stake in that company. It's unknown how much the stock is worth now, or whether Kelly still owns it after this investment and others drew scrutiny in his Senate campaign. In 2021, Kelly moved his assets to a blind trust, a formal arrangement in which lawmakers officially transfer management of their financial assets to an independent trustee to oversee. Kelly has at least one other tie to Tencent. His 2020 Senate campaign accepted $5,000 from David Wallerstein, Tencent's chief exploration officer, responsible for the company's operations outside mainland China and business initiatives with multinational partners. Neither Kelly nor Worldview disclosed the total amount of investments the company receives from Tencent, and in the fall of 2014, Jane Poitner, the then CEO of Worldview Enterprises, announced during a visit to China, Beijing, that Tencent had invested an undisclosed sum in the venture. In April 2016, it was part of a subsequent $15 million investment round. Worldview announced it had received more funds from Tencent and 3 other venture capital firms. Chinese news reports from November 2014 quoted Poitner showing that Kelly was instrumental in securing the first Tencent investment. In an article in the Oriental Morning Post, translated from Mandarin, Poitner is quoted as saying that the Tencent American leader named David met Mark Kelly, a space pilot of our team, end quote. Now, after Mark introduced him to space travel technology, David was very interested and willing to invest at this stage. She added, "When I chose a partner, I value the contribution this partner can bring to the project, and Tencent can push our cooperation to China. I think it's very important." Back in 2020, the company did not respond to several RCP requests to clarify Poitner's statements about Kelly's role in facilitating the Tencent investments and what Poitner meant when she touted Tencent's ability to push our corporation to China, quote unquote. Another article in English language newspaper China Daily elaborated on how Tencent became involved in Worldview. Poitner told the paper that Wallerstein has already met with one of the Worldview pilots and exchanged ideas on future technology, and that she considered the passion and contribution that Tencent could give to the project of huge significance to her operation. Jacob Peters, who served as Kelly campaign spokesman in an email exchange with RCP in 2020, confirmed that astronaut Kelly was a Worldview co-founder and that in the early stages he spoke to many people about his experiences as a pilot and astronaut. He argued that Tencent has no influence in the company's day-to-day business and referred questions about the company's future to Worldview. Peters touted Worldview's work with the Department of Defense and NASA and its role in creating jobs and generating millions for Arizona's economy. He did not mention, however, that Worldview never reached its job creation goals promised as part of the deal to allow the company to lease a $15 million county facility for no upfront costs. It also experienced several setbacks in its early years, including an explosion of a stratospheric balloon during ground testing in 2019 that caused more than $475,000 in damages to the company's county-owned building, and ceiling tiles to fallen employees at Raytheon missile storage facilities near the property. No one from Kelly's Senate office, including Peters, His press secretary responded to several inquiries from the RPC over the last week. Worldview's press office also did not respond to several inquiries. Now, from 2014 to 16, when Worldview was a new startup company, U.S.-China relations were far less acrimonious than they are now. However, there were still grave intelligence concerns about other governments' theft of U.S. intellectual property and outright hacking of U.S. government agencies and private companies. For more than a decade, U.S. law has barred American astronauts from working with China in space due to security concerns, as you can imagine. Now, in 2012, National Security Agency Director Keith Alexander said China's cyber espionage of U.S. intellectual property constituted the, quote, greatest transfer of wealth in history, end quote. And in 2014 and 15, the U.S. formally blamed China for hacking into the Office of Personnel Management, compromising the personal data of hundreds of thousands of federal workers, including all who had applied for top-secret clearances. In his blind trust filings with the Senate, Kelly also reported having a $100,000 to $250,000 stake in Boom Technology, a high-speed aircraft company in Colorado that partnered again with a Chinese-based travel company to help bring supersonic flight to China, quote-unquote. Worldview executives repeatedly denied sharing any technology information with Tencent, but the near-space travel business model was something the company openly marketed, and Chinese companies apparently were eager to copy this. In 2016, again the same year of Tencent's second investment in Worldview, a Chinese company, Guangqi Science, poured a whopping $1.5 billion into a space balloon tourism business. Ars Technica, a website covering news and opinions about technology and science, reported that Guangqi operations appears to be similar to that of American company Worldview Enterprises. Citing the Chinese company's website and a China Daily Report, Ars Technica said human flights would reach an altitude of 24 kilometers, that's about 15 miles, and then cruise for 2 or 3 hours before a controlled descent. As if this experience sounds a bit familiar, that's because it seems modeled right after that of Tucson, Arizona-based Worldview, which plans to fly 6 passengers in a pressured cabin to an altitude of 30 kilometers, the website said. When RCP reached out to Worldview in 2020, Ashley Smith, the company spokeswoman, downplayed Tencent's level of investment, calling the Chinese company an early investor that now maintains less than 5% in common stock. She said they do not have a seat on the board, means of control, or any access to inside information about the company or its technology. Since Worldview shifted its focus to the unmanned satellites for Earth observation, which have defense applications, Smith said, Worldview has not taken foreign investment and has reported all foreign interests and its entire ownership structure to the Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, DCSA, to obtain security and facility clearance. The DCSA concluded that foreign interests do not have any influence, control, or authority over Worldview. However, when RCP contacted DCSA directly to verify if it had given Worldview its seal of approval, the DCSA Office of Communications and Congressional Affairs denied that it had offered a clearance for Worldview. The agency said in an email it suspended the process to grant Worldview a clearance for defense work, though it would not disclose the internal deliberations or specific communications. The international uproar over China's spy balloon comes at a sensitive time for Worldview. In January, the company announced plans to go public in a merger with special purpose acquisition company Leo Holdings, a deal worth $350 million, and it's expected to close in the second quarter of this year. Now, last November, Worldview also announced a partnership with Sierra Nevada Corp, an American aerospace and national security contractor, to jointly operate balloons for defense intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Over the last several years, plenty of U.S.-China experts have been warning about Chinese investment in the U.S. space industry. A 2018 article in the Hill newspaper said China was increasingly investing in U.S. space industry startups, including the one in Worldview, even as it increases cyber attacks on U.S. technology companies. The article noted that the Justice Department had charged Chinese hackers with stealing data from 45 technology companies and government agencies, including NASA. It also highlighted a decision by Boeing to cancel a satellite order, while Global IP and Los Angeles-based startup followed a Wall Street Journal investigation that shed light on a $200 million investment by Chinese companies into the startup. In 2021, the U.S. intelligence community in a global risk assessment report warned that China was working to weaponize space and gain a strategic edge in operations integral to potential military campaigns by the People's Liberation Army. Since the China spy balloon controversy rattled Washington earlier this month, U.S. intelligence sources have confirmed that China's balloon fleet is part of a broader effort to beat the U.S. on a new near-space battlefield. Brendan Mulvaney, director of the China Aerospace Institute, a research center serving the U.S. Air Force, told RCP that China has gone to great lengths to build up its technology high-flying balloon capabilities, some quite publicly. Quote, "I remind people that not only does China steal technology, but they are more than willing to legally purchase it, invest in it, hire people, etc., whenever possible," he said. And he said, without knowing the exact details, it's hard to say how this near-space balloon technology information was transferred, but we can say for sure that this and other technology is making its way to China, end quote. Yet, if U.S. intelligence knew about the coming threat, why didn't it prevent Chinese investment in U.S. space exploration companies? The Committee on Foreign Investments in the U.S. is designed to monitor and prevent U.S. adversary influence on U.S. companies that could be detrimental to national security, but the agency usually focuses on mergers and does not prevent smaller startup investments from Chinese companies. In recent years, U.S. agencies instituted several safeguards to monitor foreign investment and restrict the flow of high-tech exports to China and other adversaries. The Treasury and Commerce Department also slapped sanctions on Chinese companies widely known for their surveillance products. Now, as a result, 6 Chinese companies are prohibited from obtaining U.S. goods, technologies without prior authorization or license from U.S. government. Amy Mitchell, former senior official at Department of State and Defense, said the U.S. government could do far better than this scattershot approach with its Chinese sanctions. Instead, lawmakers should be establishing some across-the-board prohibitions for China investments and U.S. exports, she said. Now, in a capitalist system, arbitrarily changing the rules will disadvantage the companies in the long run, so we want to be certain about where to draw the lines. On the flip side, Chinese companies, even those closely affiliated with PLA and some that in the U.S. has sanctioned, are increasingly funded by U.S. investors. Many China companies also are listed on the U.S. stock exchanges. According to a 2021 annual report to Congress of the U.S.-China Economic Security Review, U.S. holdings of Chinese equity and debt securities have risen by a whopping 57.5% since 2017 to $1.2 trillion total. Many Republicans want to force these Chinese companies to give up their listings on Wall Street if they refuse to open their books to U.S. accounting regulators. Now, it's a very simple question. If we want to survive, we're going to have to take measures that once were considered to be extreme against China. And this was originally from A Real Clear Politics on WND. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box